I can send it onto the private chat thing, can't I? So other people can.
Good evening, guys, and thank you very much once again. This is my second one today, and it was a good one earlier, wasn't it? But it's always good when Robert's on, and we all look forward to that. Don't forget, guys, if you've got any messages, put it in your left-hand column, and if you've got any messages from me, make sure you inbox them, and I will get them. Okay, we have got another show around about 9 o'clock, and that is the last one for tonight. Also, can I tell everybody, please, no more requests to come on to any of the shows. We are fully booked up now for September, and all what we're doing now is taking October. So October we don't mind, but not September. We're fully booked. Anyway, that's it for me. So that is really good. That's really good. Anyway, how are you?
I'm good. I've got a very interesting thing. Yeah, I've got a very interesting thing to talk about today. I think, I've got the link to the article I'm going to talk about. Can I press send and send it on private chat?
Yes, please. Yep.
There it blows. So if anybody wants to know what the hell I was talking about, you can read it on the actual article, which is quite a breakthrough from my point of view.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So I'm getting your article up now. So yeah, that is really, really, really interesting. Why this? Why?
Well, I think from my point of view, my family are a business family, and I was doing my A levels, and I got bored, and I thought it was a bit monastic doing A levels. So my grandparents sent me to management school, and when I was there, you do management science and sort of management practices. How should you treat people? And one thing I learned was, and they told quite explicitly, that behaviorism was not an acceptable way to manage people. And in fact, on the van delivery systems, they've started using it, where all they're doing is measuring how long you drive. It's like time and motion studies. Some people might remember time and motion studies. I don't know if you've heard of those, Steve, I think. But
yes,
that was, yeah. So the point being that in 1901, psychology was, the British Psychological Association came into being. So for argument's sake, in 1901, psychology officially started, in Britain at least. And then in 1912, you got this guy called John Watson, who invented this idea called behaviorism. And I think hopefully everybody's starting to hear more about behaviorism. They pretend to be psychologists, but they're not really psychologists. And in fact, if you watch the telly now, in fact, I noticed on GB UK News, somebody came on admitting to be a behavioral psychologist. And really, that's what psychiatry is all about. It's about behavior. And I was watching Ancient Skies on PBS America just now. Brilliant program, I have to say. And astrologers, right? And astronomers, I suppose, they want to observe and predict, right? They want to observe the stars and the movement of the stars, and they want to predict what the stars are going to do, right? And doctors are exactly the same, and psychiatrists. They want to observe your behavior and then predict what you're going to do.
Right.
Now, I've had this thing for a long time because it's fairly obvious that you can't predict what people are going to do 100% of the time. Sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you get it wrong, because you cannot predict what humans are going to do. Animals may be. Animals, if, for example, a good example, if you stroke a cat's back, its tail always goes up. Everybody know about that one? We all agree on that? If you stroke a cat's back, its tail always goes up. And again, if you hit your knee with a hammer, your knee jerks. That's a reflex, right? But that's not thinking. That's not thinking. The difference between humans and animals is that humans have a mind. And what the difference that makes is that no human is quite the same.
Right.
So you can't go into a situation like the behaviorists are trying to do and say, if you do such and such, the humans will do such and such. They've tried to do this with the pandemic, right? They've been trying to use fear to get, well, so some people say, right? They're trying to intimidate people into getting the vaccine and stuff like that. They try and get people to do things. It's called nudge at the minute. But
okay, but is that all hearsay, or is it?
It's what?
Is that hearsay or is that a fact?
Well, thereby comes the point, is that in this article, which it's actually 2021, and it's the first article I've really seen that clearly puts it across. There's a big difference between what animals and objects do and what humans do. The difference between humans is what they do is probabilistic. So perhaps you'll do that, but it's not a law. So to be a law, you have to say, if you do X, then Y definitely happens. And as it says, psychology is in crisis, but not the one you're thinking of. So the point is that when they do one particular psychological experiment, they get one result with one person. But when they do it with another, they get another response. And so this is throwing them, particularly the doctors and the psychiatrists, into crisis, because they are all behaviorists and they're trying to work out laws of behavior for humans. And what this article is explaining, and which, to be frank, I've known for quite a while, is that humans are not mechanistic because they have a mind. Humans aren't just conscious, they're self-conscious. Or sometimes they call it self-aware, but I think having different names for it makes it complicated. The difference with humans and animals is that humans can be self-conscious, and so they can make a decision about what they do. They don't just react in the same stereotype way to everything, which is where psychiatry and indeed mental health is going wrong, because the doctors just refuse to accept that humans have minds of their own. And humans can decide what to say and what to think and what to do, whereas that they just don't act under, if you make one stimulus, it doesn't mean you get a particular response. And so this is why she's written a very simple art. It's very straightforward. It's not too complicated. But this explains what the problem is in psychology and even in psychiatry, is that doctors, psychiatrists, behaviorist psychologists think that there is a law of behavior. And there isn't. There's no law of behavior. There's only probabilities, because there are so many things that impact on the human at one time can make them think differently. I'll give you one quick metaphor, and that is laboratory scientists, what we call scientists, but are actually natural scientists. They're laboratory scientists. They see the world in Newton-Einstein ways, like a billiard table. You have the white ball, you hit the white ball hits the other balls, and you can kind of predict where all the other balls are going to go, right? Because they all follow the laws of
gravity
and all that stuff. Humans are completely different because they have minds of their own. So even the cue, for example, is wibbly wobbly. You've got to treat the cue right for it to do what you want it to do. And so when you hit the white ball, it could just go any way. If it doesn't want to cooperate with you, it won't. And that's the difference between natural physics and what you'd call, truthfully, is proper psychology. Humans don't act in predictable ways.
Okay, so are you trying to say to me that these doctors who study mental health or who is in the mental health background and everything, they are not trained properly? Is that what you're telling me?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. And finally, I've got the article, which you can all see there, because I mean, no, I'm not an academic in that sense. And here and there, it's explaining it to you that humans are probabilistic. They're not mechanistic. There are so many, for example, with you and me, we've had, completely different lives, right? We've had different upbringings, had different personal experiences, so that we will react differently to the same situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And what doctors just don't understand, they can't work it out because they're lab people. They deal with chemicals. If you put water and oil together, you know that the water and oil will separate, right? That's a natural law. We know that's true, natural physics law. But humans aren't like that. Humans are all slightly varied. They have a spectrum of attitudes and feelings towards things that are not set in stone. They're not mechanistic. So natural physics is mechanistic. Humans are not mechanistic, which is what this, what's her name? Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett from the Northeastern University in the United States. And she's explaining it quite well. I don't think I could particularly explain it any better myself, but that's where the doctors, and particularly in case of mental health, that's where they just get confused. For one thing, lab people don't study English or languages, which, as I noticed, they were criticizing the bad messaging over the coronavirus thing. It's because these people don't study English, so they don't have a good handle on the language and using persuasive language, for example. Psychology is one of the big things is persuasion. How do you persuade people to do things? You've got to be able to explain things. But if you just believe all I've got to do is this and then they'll do that, which isn't true, you're constantly going to struggle with people and how they react to, which is why I think most people don't like psychiatrists. They don't like.
I don't like psychiatrists now.
No, because psychiatrists just think in terms of chemistry.
Well, the trouble is, though, with psychiatrists, see, the trouble is, they don't actually know what's, as I keep saying to you each week, probably, you know, they don't know what the actual problem is with you. They only can kind of like, you know, probably guess, probably.
Well, if you remember, we were talking about the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and I hope everybody reads this book, Cracked, by James Davies, where it explains it. What they have is like profiles, tick box, criminal profiles. So when a psychiatrist comes in to see you, they look at you and they watch what you do. They might listen to what you say, but it's unlikely. They'll look at what you do. So they look at certain parts of what you do, and then they see, does it fit into this particular mental illness, which is not, you know, their characterization of it. Does it fit into this? Does it fit into that? That's my son wandering around in the background there. But so they've got 370 of these profiles. And what you do, they tick it, and then they start. So, for example, if I'm sitting like this, like, then they're going to say, "Oh, he's depressed." But if I go, "Oh, I don't know what's going on," I don't know how we go, they're going to say, "Oh, he's anxious." So it's as simple as that. I remember once I went into the doctors, and actually I was having a diabetic attack. And I was saying, and I didn't go in to see him, but I went to see something completely different. I just sat down there, and I was having what we now know was a diabetic attack. And he said I was depressed. In fact, I wasn't depressed at all. I was having because exhaustion looks like you're depressed.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you something. I remember when I had a blood clot in my brain. I had a blood clot.
Oh my
and
God.
then I had a stroke, and they said to me, I can't remember what it was. Oh, they said, you can go home now. You can actually go home now. You don't need a scan and everything. And I was really bad way. And my wife, who was then, she said, "Oh no, he's not well. He can't even do anything." And they said, "Well, we think that he's not, you know, but we will give him a scan if he wants to sit around all day." So what they made me do is get on my own bed. They gave it to somebody else because they thought what they're going to do is that they're going to, you know, I'm going to be going home. So I went for a scan, and they said to me, "I've got a blood clot in my brain." Right, and then right, I told them, and I said, and they said, "Well, we were told different."
You're too different.
No, not too different. I was told different. I was
Oh,
told by another
yeah.
doctor that I
Yeah.
don't need a scan.
Yeah, no, I got you now. Yeah, I mean, this is, I had ME in the mid 80s because I'd been working my guts out, playing in bad gigs and all that kind of stuff. And I'd had glandular fever in the late 70s. And so by the mid 80s, I was, it had turned into ME. What did they say? I was depressed.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I had,
Yeah.
anything you turn up for, oh, he's depressed. So they get, they just want to sell you pills. So I mean, I don't think we should place too much confidence in doctors at any time, personally, because the problem is diagnosis. And it's
Yeah.
the diagnosis where the bias comes in, because these doctors are not trained, whether they're psychiatrists or really psychiatrist, doctor, what difference does it make? They're not trained to avoid bias, so that they simply look at you, see what once they've made up in their own minds, they know what it is. They just see what they want to see, which is why I mean, as a management psychologist, which is what I am, apart from my music side, I mean, that's my training, is that the first thing you have to say is, it's actually David Kahneman is the famous guy, quick thinking and slow thinking. So if your quick thought is the first thing that comes into your mind, and you say, oh, it's that. And the trick is to say, ignore that, push it out the way, and give it a second thought. What do I think it also could be? Because what I find in both the criminal justice system and the medical system is that people in the systems they believe in what they call gut instinct.
Yeah.
And so they think, oh, that's what it is. They think they're and all the research has shown that ordinary people can make the same decisions as so-called specialists. The point about specialists is that they're paid to be there to do it. You've got to have somebody who's there to do it. But if you get a group of people and are given the same set of data, they can come up with the right answers, even where the specialist may not. So
I just keep saying, psychiatrists, they can't even diagnose what kind of mental health problem. They can only presume,
I mean, that is bias, and they don't even know they're doing it. And the problem is when people come up with an idea and then they just start looking for evidence that proves what they think, rather than looking for evidence that disproves what they think. And if you're a proper scientist, like what I am, I like to think, if you come up with an idea, you have to try and find evidence that disproves it. If you can't find any evidence that disproves it, then fair enough, you can start to assume it might be true. It might be true, but there's far too much within the whole of the university system that, I mean, cognitive bias has only just been really fully accepted in the last 2, 3, 4 years. It's quite shocking because, I mean, I've studied it literally since I studied management, 76. I was part of the reason why I wanted to get a degree in psychology later on, because I was so interested in decision making, because management, running a business, whether it's a record company, a band or tutoring business, it's all about decision making. And to make the right decisions, you mustn't be biased. You've got to avoid bias. And of course, the ridiculous thing about, everybody's heard about these unconscious bias training. I mean, that is a really stupid name, because bias is unconscious. You don't know that you're doing it. And of course, I learned this, and a lot of it is unconscious. So I spent a lot of my life looking for things that I didn't realize I was doing. So I do it all the time. I mean, after now I'm 66 in September, believe it or not, and I've got used to doing it now. So I'm relatively unbiased, but I still make assumptions just like anybody else. And obviously, I guess I don't do it so often, but you've got to avoid jumping to conclusions. And this is what happens with psychiatry or doctors, or certainly in the criminal justice system and all sorts. They just assume, a guy's black walking down the street late at night. must be, carrying a knife or drugs or what, all this kind of nonsense, despite the fact we see loads of very well-educated, highly intelligent black people on the television. I mean, the NHS psychiatry is almost dominated by Asian doctors, for example. The stereotyping is probably the worst thing anyway. It's the biggest problem we have as a society today, although it probably had its uses in evolutionary sense. If you see something that looks like a lion, you better run. So even if it wasn't a lion, it doesn't matter because you're okay. So sort of that kind, it's called heuristics in psychology. In actual fact, it's we call it jumping to conclusions. You've got a stereotype, you think you see what it is, and so therefore that's what it is. Whole point about bias training is that you've got to learn that when you think you see something, you've got to double check that you did see what you saw. I can give you a good, completely neutral example that I learned from my cognitive psychology tutor, and that there was a road in Southampton that went round a corner and then went under one of those old style railway bridges, right? And they kept having crashes in this particular spot. And nobody could understand why. People thought there was something coming the other way, and there wasn't anything coming away, and they were crashing into the side of the railway bridge, which was damaging the bridge. And in the end, I can't remember it was Chris, my tutor, or not, but what they found out was at a particular time of day, when you came round that corner and the sun was in a particular angle, it looked like a cart with a bale of hay on the back of it was coming through the tunnel, the bridge. Do you see what I mean? So it was an optical illusion. You thought that a carriage with hay on it, because so that happens all the time. We what is it? Our actual field of vision is only about that much, but the rest is completely. It's just your brain assuming what it can see. So the whole problem is making assumptions about what people do, and the point is that what people do is not mechanistic. Like, if you do this, then it's that. It's highly probabilistic. So you've got to get a measure of people, which, I mean, I've been in retail. I mean, my family in retail. I've been in education and entertainment. So I've met dozens, hundreds and hundreds of people. So I've got a better, I mean, if I'm sitting in an office all day just typing on a computer, never meeting people, I'm going to struggle harder to understand what different people are like, right?
Right.
But if I've met loads and loads of people, then it's easier for me to work out what the probability is of the kind of what they do and such. But if you're just a doctor who's been trained with a set of profiles and you've just got to match, in a stereotype, why there he is, he wants to be on telly.
You're right.
So get out the picture. It's disturbing to the universe. But as it says in this article, which I think is a good article, and it's a sign that things are slowly moving, is that local authorities have to understand, and I mean that's the NHS, the CPS, the police to some extent. I mean, I don't want to blame bobbies on the beat. I mean, they're told what to do, and it's the management, like that woman at the Metropolitan Police, whatever her name is. So they've got to realise that people are all different, and so that you can't predict what people are going to do. You can only guess, I suppose, is the best way of putting it, and that is going to be a major, because I mean, totalitarian society, 2084, the Russians, Nazi Germany, these marching masses of people all acting in one, is just a fantasy. That's why I love the sort of shambolic democracy of England, because we allow people to be the way they want to be, and to be the people that they are.
Brilliant. Very good. Very good. Thank you for that. That was really interesting. That's
good. And don't forget to read the article, everybody.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Brilliant. The article is very good. Okay, folks. Thanks very much. I'm going to be back in around about 5 minutes' time.
I'll see you later, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. thought you didn't like them. Oh, I see. All right. Am I to take it you don't want to go to? Right. Pretty tired, so let's get cracking. What's going on there? I reckon being